delicious food, it's like medicine.
It's not like medicine, it is medicine. Yeah. I'm like the queen of getting things for free. I've only paid for one concert in my entire life.
One?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Financial Reset, brought to you by Million Stories and Profithub. I'm Dariany Santana, and today we have our financial expert, Mr. Chris Browning from Popcorn Finance.
Hey everyone, today we're going to be jumping into some of your most common questions that we got from the response to our poll, all to help you kick off 2025 on the right financial foot.
Yeah, whether you're just tackling debt or you need to save more money or you have a hard time sticking to a budget, don't worry, everybody. We got you. Okay, without further ado. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, first question. What is the craziest purchase that you've ever made on a credit card?
I had this car, I had my eye on. I've been wanting to get it for a while, could not afford it. But they were like, hey, if you put a down payment on this big enough, we'll let you drive it off the lot. Had a credit card with me. I pulled that thing out so fast. And I really regret that because you should not be putting your car purchases on your credit card.
No, especially because it's a credit card, so now the interest is gonna go up. So now you're spending more money as the car is simultaneously depreciating.
Yeah, like immediately, the moment I turned that car on and stepped on the gas, the value dropped so much. And now I'm paying a bunch of interest.
So what not to do?
I beg of you, do not do that. But I'm interested to hear, like, what is the craziest thing that you put on a credit card?
This is gonna be really boring because I grew up with a fear of bad credit. Some people are scared of monsters or the boogeyman. For me, I grew up with a fear of bad credit. So I actually didn't get a credit card until I was like 23. And I have never, in my whole time having this credit card, ever put something on there that I couldn't pay off that month. Yeah, I know that's actually kind of a flex now that I say it out loud and there's like people listening. Never. Only one time actually, because by mistake, it didn't take out the money automatically, but I called them and I was like, this is your mistake.
I'm impressed. Maybe we should switch spots. I think you should be answering the finance questions.
I can give you some financial advice. But yeah, no, I've never, I think the craziest thing I've even put on a credit card is I bought my dad a jacuzzi once. He didn't really use it. So it just wasn't a good purchase. He used it twice and got sick of it. And I was like, okay, well, now I spent $2,000 on a jacuzzi for no reason.
Right, you're like, okay, well, appreciate you really using that gift, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So how do people improve their credit score without getting into more debt?
You know, I think there's a lot of really bad rumors and myths that go around how to improve your credit score. And I think one I hear going around all the time is like, oh, you should just make sure you keep a balance on your card. Horrible idea. That does not help you whatsoever. Really, the two biggest things you can do, it's make your payments on time and keep your balance low. You try to keep it under 30% of the actual overall limit you have on your card. But doing those two things, that makes up about 65% of your overall credit score. So for most people, if you're doing those two items, you're gonna have a great credit score, or you can improve what might be a bad credit score right now.
How about paying off your credit card? Because I feel like that's a rumor I hear all the time. Like, if you pay it off, that's bad, even though it feels like it should be good.
Oh no, it is a great thing because something called credit utilization, which is basically a fancy way of saying the percent of your overall credit limit that you're using. As long as you keep that under 30%, you're great, but keeping it at zero, even better, because now you're not paying any interest, which you should not be paying interest on your credit card. Be like you and pay your card off.
If I were to tattoo something on myself, it would be, if you're gonna put on your credit card, pay it off so you don't pay interest, because then you're not paying more. And then you get airline points.
Exactly, it's a win-win.
I'm not the expert here, but I am so adamant about how to use a credit card. I don't know, you tell me.
I've traveled so much for free just off of airline points.
Period. I'm not paying for flights. I'm not doing it. If you get rich, which I'm hoping so, in 2025, what's the craziest thing you're going to spend your money on?
You know, I haven't traveled much. I've only in the past 4 or 5 years where I actually gotten to travel. I grew up never even being on an airplane until I was 18. It was a short flight. So for me, if I got rich, 2025, January 1st, I'm hopping on a plane. I'm not coming back till December 31st. And I am just going to every place I've always wanted to go to. I'm just going to go in there and just be letting the credit card fly. What about you?
When I become rich in 2025, oh my gosh, this is horrible. The first thing that came to my mind is that I would buy my dad another restaurant to run, which is so stressful, but it's it would be a really nice gift.
You were such a good daughter.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't even mention my parents.
No, I take it back. No, I'm rich. I'm just going to not look at the price tag of anything for a whole year. That is my task. I'm gonna buy whatever the hell I want.
That's the dream,
Period.
right?
Yes.
Just walk in there, I got it.
Not interested in what the price tag is, just boop, boop. Okay, so how do I know that I'm ready to take on a major financial commitment like buying a car or buying my own place?
I think the biggest thing is could you, like off the cuff, if I just walked up to you, could you tell me a bunch of details about your personal financial life? Could you tell me how much debt you have? If you do, what are your interest rates? Can you tell me how much you make, how much you're saving, how much you're investing? Because you really need to know your personal financial life in and out without any question before you can make a decision on whether you can buy something big and lock yourself into some type of long-term payment. Because the last thing you want to do is just assume you're doing okay, make this big purchase and now be like stuck with this huge monthly payment, and then you realize, oh, I really didn't understand what I was paying for every month. So I think being able to understand where you are and what you're doing and where your money is going is the very first step to understanding if you can make some type of major financial commitment.
All right. What's the most money you've ever spent on a night out? And was it worth it?
Oh, I would say, look, I'm kind of cheap. When I think about it, I probably spent this, I try to keep things reasonable, but I spent at least maybe like $600 or $700 on one night because I went to a basketball game and I was set on having good seats because, I lived my whole life being up at the top. I was like, I want to get good seats. And I spent a little bit more than I thought I was going to. Nothing crazy. I didn't get wild, but for me, that was crazy. For me, I was like, what are you doing? Why did you do this? But I had a good time, so I didn't regret it.
Yeah, of course not.
Now, what about you? What is the most you've ever spent on a night out?
I'm going to be honest. I'm like the queen of getting things for free. I've only paid for one concert in my entire life.
One?
Yeah, because listen, your network is your network or your net. Exactly. I did pay for one concert, and it was Daddy Yankee last year because he was retiring. Yeah, and they were $500 a seat, and I did not care. I cried the second he came on, and I would do it again. So it was worth it. It was a once in a lifetime thing.
You couldn't pass that up.
I couldn't.
No, you would have regretted it for life.
Absolutely. # no regrets. Is it possible to budget but still have, an enjoyable social life?
Oh yeah, 100%. You should be budgeting to have a good social life, because I think where we're getting in trouble and have problems is when we just assume we got enough money. We have no idea what's going on. You just take your card out and just swipe it because you're having a good time, or a friend asks you to go out, or something pops up last minute. Really, if in the beginning of the month you set up a budget and you include the things you want to do in that, one, you're going to be happy, right? Because you're like, okay, I know I have this money to do what I want to do with. And then also the guilt that comes with spending money, that starts to go away because you're like, I planned for this. So you have room to do the things you like, you're still budgeting, you're not wrecking the rest of the month for yourself. I love spending guilt-free. That's how I like to do it. So you can definitely do both of those things at the same time.
What would you say is your most cringy purchase that you've made?
It's not as bad as it sounds, so it's not like something crazy, but I really got into these D&D improv podcasts.
Can you actually just expand on what that is?
So it's basically like Dungeons and Dragons. It's this role-playing game. You use dice. It puts me in a very nerdy light, and I cringe a little bit at that.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it's people making an honest living.
True.
And it sounds like you're in a way supporting the arts, so it feels good.
Right.
I feel like it's a good thing that you're doing.
Independent creators, I'm making sure they have a place to stay with my few dollars I'm throwing their way. So I feel okay. I feel a little bit better about that.
Yeah.
What about you? Is there anything that you spend money on that makes you cringe?
I'll be honest, I just spend so much money on food, but the one thing that I have spent thousands of dollars on is laser hair removal. Worth every dime.
Yeah, it's not cringy. That's just self-care. That's all you're doing.
Exactly.
You're saving yourself time.
Time, energy, effort, stress.
Yeah, you're good. Don't even worry about that one.
What's one small habit that we can start today that'll have a huge impact on our finances?
I think the biggest thing you can do, it's even with a small amount of money, you do not need to have a ton of money to do this. And that's start investing. I think some people feel like you have to have all this money, you have to be rich, you got to have thousands of dollars to throw into your retirement account. But you can literally put $10 into your 401k or your IRA. Yes, it feels small, feels like not much, but one, you're building this habit. You're putting in a little bit at a time, but also it's going to have time to grow. So even if it's just a few dollars, the more time it has to sit there, the more time it can just compound and grow over time. So that small action will have this huge payoff, decades from now. That's something very tiny you can do, and no one's going to regret making that change.
Okay, quick follow-up. I have a Roth IRA. Is there any way that I can, that you can lose with a Roth IRA?
With all investing, there's always risk involved, right? Because you are putting your money into stock and bonds. But I think the good thing, especially if you're being diversified, meaning you're spreading your money across multiple different investments. So it may be something like a mutual fund or a target date fund inside of your retirement account. There's always a risk, but as long as you spread your risk out, spread your money across multiple items, the likelihood of everything falling is extremely low. And the history of the stock market has been so far, even after we have these crashes and these dips in the market, it does return, and oftentimes it's much better than it did prior to that crash.
Have you ever convinced yourself that you were saving money by spending?
It's always a piece of tech gear. That's what it always is with me, a camera, a light or something. And I'm like, well, look, if I waited and bought this like, next year, it would cost me more. So if I buy it now, I'm technically saving money. Does that make sense? No, I'm not. I'm still spending money, but that's the logic that I've used sometimes where it's like, okay, this is how I can convince myself that this is going to work out for me in the long run. What about you? Do you have an example of something like this?
I mean, it's more of an energetic thing where I'm like, well, if I'm spending money, then that means the universe knows that I need more money, so it's going to spend more money. And that's a fact. That is the only way that works. Should people be more worried about saving for an emergency fund or investing?
Really, the answer is you should be doing both. Now, I know it's hard, right? We only have so much money. It's kind of hard to sometimes split your efforts in both directions. For me, if there's one thing that you wanted to focus on first, I would always put saving for an emergency just a little bit higher than investing, only for the fact that if something goes wrong, we're most likely to pull out a credit card to try to cover that, which is going to cost you money in the long run. So if you have nothing saved, please focus on that first. But if you have a little bit in savings already, maybe $1,000 sitting there, you still should be saving more. But I think that's a time where you can start to kind of split your efforts and put a little bit in investing, a little bit towards your saving for an emergency. And that's just because with investing, time is your best friend. So the more time you have to let your money just sit there, the less effort it's going to be on you.
You said $1,000. That to me does not sound like enough for any emergency. Like if my dog breaks its leg, it's going to run me more than that $1,000.
Oh.
What do you think is a realistic amount for people to save?
I think it's maybe something easy for people to wrap their minds around, right? 1,000 is a nice round number, but the reality is a lot of expenses, especially like emergency trip to the hospital. Sometimes you have like a water heater breakdown or like a leak in your roof. Those are all going to cost you more than $1,000 in a lot of cases. But I would say, really, if you hit that $1,000 mark, it's more so on my cue of like, okay, you maybe can split your efforts and put a little bit more towards investing. But realistically, you want to have anywhere from 3 months to 12 months of your expenses saved as your emergency fund. And it varies based off of if you're a single income household, you want to be a little bit higher. Make sure you get to like 6 months. If you have a dual income household, then you have a little bit more flexibility. That 3 months may carry you a little bit further. But I think 6 months, golden rule, 12 months, you're being extra cautious. But $1,000 is nice because a lot of people don't even have that.
Let's say we have 6 months of savings, right? What should we do with that money? Should it just sit in a bank account, maybe a high yield bank account?
You already see.
I'm just making sure I'm doing the right thing.
You're doing it. If that's what you're doing the right thing.
This is for everyone listening, but also very much for me.
No, high yield savings account is one of the best places that you can stick that. And I mean, high yield savings account is just a savings account that pays a higher interest rate. But yeah, I think there's a temptation sometimes though for people to be like, well, let me just invest this. It's just money sitting here, thousands of dollars. Maybe I should make a little bit more on it. And I would caution people against that just because if you need the money in a moment where the stock market, like for example, 2020 stock market crashed, you're pulling out your money and you might be potentially losing money as you're selling those stocks off to get the cash. So for me, that chunk of money, I keep it safe, high yield savings account in a bank account that's FDIC insured, meaning that you will have deposit insurance up to $250,000 to protect you in case the bank were to fail. So make sure it's one of those banks. There's a lot of savings accounts out there that you can find that aren't FDIC insured, and there is a risk that if the bank fails in those situations, I mean, you'll probably get your money back, but there's a chance you might not. So always double check that where you're putting large sums of money into a bank.
And is it fair to assume that like the big banks all are
FDIC?
Yeah, that?
Yeah, so it's Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation.
The bigger banks most likely have that.
Most banks you go to and you open a savings account, you're going to be covered. But always just double check because there are some out there that look like what you would think is a normal savings account, but they don't have that backing. So yeah, just be safe.
Okay, sounds good. What's the shortest amount of time that you've stuck to a budget in the past?
I think the shortest time was probably about a week. It was the start of the month, and I was like, I got these plans. I was trying to get out of debt. I was trying to, get my life together, stop spending all my money on eating out. I immediately scrapped it because I'd already spent too much money, and I was done. The month was over a week into the month, so yeah, it was rough. But what about you? What is the fastest you've ever bailed on a budget?
So confession, I've never made any kind of budget before.
Never?
Nope. I'm frugal. I'm all about saving money. No, it just feels so constrained and so like. There's so many parameters. That's just not my vibe.
So
I'm not saying do this. I'm not saying this is good. It works for me as an individual. But no, I've never made a budget.
So do you just have like such a good internal like accounting system that you just know like I'm good?
No, I wouldn't say it's that. I wouldn't say that I know exactly because sometimes I'm like, oh wow, This is an expensive month. I just always know that I'm living below my means. And I always think that that's the best financial advice I ever got. I remember it was like my first boyfriend, he told me that. It's super simple, but it's really good advice.
I mean, it just goes to show, like, if you are consistently making sure you spend less than you make, you kind of don't have to be obsessed with it. You'll be good. You don't have to be constantly looking at, oh, I'm going to overdraw my account, because you're good.
Yeah, that, and I'm so adamant about having an emergency fund, you know, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I'm just, anything that can deplete my stress levels, and having savings does that.
Oh, yeah.
So how do people save more money if their paycheck is barely covering their current expenses?
I've gotten this question before, and I've answered it on my show, and everyone's in a kind of slightly different financial situation. And I always say, like, there's three groups of people. There's people who have so much money, they're not stressing about it. There's people who, you know, maybe have good income, but make some bad decisions. And then there's those people who are just really struggling day to day to get by. And so for me, for this advice, if you're one of those people who's in that bottom tier where you're like, I'm just like making it through the day is a win, don't listen to this. This is not for you. Don't stress yourself out about that. But if you're someone who's like, okay, I'm in that middle group where I'm spending maybe too much, I think sitting down, making at least a brief budget of what am I spending, what am I earning, and how far is that out of whack, and what can I do to bring that in line, and see if there is just you making adjustments, or if it is really maybe like an income problem. But I think oftentimes it's just sometimes making a few changes on how we spend and really keeping track of those things.
You know, a friend of mine just asked me today, like, would you date a guy who lives at home? Because I'm thinking of moving back home with my parents. And I was like, listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you are struggling, go back home.
Yes.
Save the money, whatever you have to do, whether that's, you know, not great for your ego or yourself, it doesn't freaking matter. Do what you need to do so that you feel safe, and then you can build. But if you have that as a feasible option, if you need to cut some certain things that are, you know, deemed a luxury, because living by yourself is a luxury, then do that until you're in a better place.
Yeah, there's no shame in taking care of yourself.
Absolutely not.
Especially if you have family that's willing to do that for you. That's a great gift. Take it and use it to improve your financial situation.
Listen, I lived at home until I was 28, and that's very normal because I'm Cuban, and my parents are like, come back. But part of the reason I did that is I was saving money while I was doing that. I don't care if I should have moved out by 18, that's irrelevant. You have to do what you have to do to build a strong foundation so that you can make better financial decisions.
Oh yeah, don't struggle for no reason. If you have an option now, take it, please.
Exactly. Yeah. What is your go-to guilty pleasure purchase when you're stressed?
It is always, food. If I'm stressed out, the thing that always relaxes me, calms me down, is to go to like a nice restaurant. Not fancy, doesn't have to be fancy, just a nice restaurant with good food. And just have a delicious meal that in no way I could replicate at home. And that makes me feel so much better. For you, what's your go-to thing?
I live on top of a Whole Foods.
Oh no.
So I will just go downstairs. I'll just buy like an obscenely expensive ice cream. And I just feel so good.
Delicious food. It's like medicine.
It's not like medicine, it is medicine. Yeah.
I felt that.
So if there's something you're gonna invest in, it is the food you're putting into your body. Because it makes you who you are. And that's a good investment.
So deep. I feel like I'm learning something every time we speak.
That's the goal, for it to be a reciprocal learning experience for all of us. You too. How do they stop overspending when it seems like everything is so tempting on social media?
I mean, it's hard right now. I mean, you go on to TikTok, right? I'm sure you see all the TikTok shop. Every third video is someone selling me something, kind of like a little QVC on there. And I think what we have to do is like tell ourselves, like, look, we know we're gonna want to spend money. Like, it's gonna happen. You're gonna get tempted. You're gonna see something that catches your eye. But I think the key is to not deprive yourself and not say, oh no, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm gonna go cold turkey. I'm never buying anything else I see on social media. I think just build it into your budget. You can have a separate checking account. That's what I like to do. Pull it off a separate account, put X amount of dollars in this checking account or savings account, and then know this is my money to make those little purchases.
Yeah, that's so smart. I just swipe very quickly.
That's also an option.
Anytime an ad comes up, I'm not interested. That's what I do. And it's worked. I've only bought one thing off social media.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Swear. Well, it's also like a form of protest. I'm like, I'm not gonna do this. This is not what I signed up for when I signed up for social media.
Exactly, because once you click on it, they're like, oh yeah, we got you. So they're gonna keep giving you more and more of those ads, more and more of those videos.
Not me.
So I'm really curious now, like, what was that one thing, the one thing that got you to buy something on social media?
Do you know what beef tallow is?
Vaguely.
Yeah, it's like the fat that's derived from literally cows. But there's a huge thing on social media that it's good for your skin. And I believe that for some people it is. It wasn't for mine. And that's why I'm no longer buying anything off social media. My esthetician was pissed.
I'm assuming this comes in like more of like a cosmetic.
Yeah,
it's not like a little bucket of like beef fat.
It's like a jar, and it's honey and beef tallow. And I really do think it works for a lot of people. It did not work for me. And that's why I don't buy things off social media.
All it takes is one bad experience to kind of cut the habit for you.
Yep, there we go. If your student loans were a person, what would you say to them?
Have you ever watched The Office? I said that. So I met a person who didn't watch The Office. Okay. There's one scene, it's with Kelly and they're in the conference room. And I think it's Ryan is up at the front. And she was like, I have a question. He was like, what? He's like, number one, how dare you?
Do you have a question, Kelly?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
And that's kind of the energy I feel. Like, how dare you come into my life? Because it's ridiculous. I feel like so many people, I have so many friends who struggle with student loans. And it's just like the audacity.
I can't even think about student loans because they make me so angry and they're so unjust. I am one of the very few people that paid off my student loans in my mid-20s because I'm insane. When I took my student loans, it was so inconsequential, right? Like I didn't even know what the hell I was doing.
No.
But I remember I called maybe 2 or 3 years after I graduated and I was like, hi, I'm just curious, like how much do I owe now? And it had accrued interest or whatever. And when I found out that I had to pay more, I immediately took out almost all my savings and paid it, which is insane. But the thought of me having to pay even more than a penny than what I had to pay made me so angry that I paid it all.
Well, I want you to take that energy and tell me, what would you say to your student loan?
Understand I will get blocked on this app and understand that I look nice and I'm wearing a dress, but it would be a very different energy coming out of my mouth.
I could feel that energy over here. So we'll let you keep it private.
It's palpable. What is the best way for people to tackle their student loans?
Some of these student loan balances are high. I think where we get in trouble, I think is with the deferment periods. I think oftentimes you're not aware that when you're pausing the payments on your student loans, they can still be accruing interest. And if you're in school right now and you're deferring your loans, I would say just take a look at what that looks like. What interest rate are you paying? And maybe run a couple numbers. Maybe go to your student loan office or your student aid office and kind of talk to them about this. Like, what am I getting myself into if I don't continue to make payments while I'm in school? Another thing is like to think about these repayment plans that are out there. And there's like the SAVE program. There's so many different versions of it. And oftentimes with these specifically income-driven repayment plans, they use your income to help determine what is a stable amount for you to be paying on these student loans. So I would say look into those options to see, because if your payments are too high right now and you feel like you're really having a hard time making ends meet, really checking out some of these payment plans, because they can help modify your payment to give you a smoother path to paying it off. So that way at least you don't feel so much strain like on your day-to-day expenses, because it can get up there. Those payments can get high. If you don't know what's happening, you're not really paying attention, it can really drag out for years.
Yeah. If you could erase one financial decision from your past, what would it be?
I got into a bunch of credit card debt in my early 20s. It ended up being about $27,000 worth of credit card debt through a combination of like medical expenses, bought some furniture, school expenses we didn't expect pop up, and it was just like, it got out of control quickly, but I was just not paying attention. Like I knew I was spending money I didn't have. Like obviously I'm putting this on a credit card. I know I wasn't making the payments that were equivalent to what I was spending on the credit card, and it just went out of control. So I could have been farther ahead. I could have been less stressed out if I would have just, been a little more on top of things and paid attention and stuff. But I was in my 20s. I was living life. Yeah.
What is the smartest way for people to start investing?
It can get crazy quick, but I think the best way to just get started and get into investing is something so boring, and that's investing either through your 401k at work or an IRA if your job doesn't offer one to you. It's boring. There's not a lot of excitement. Like you don't need to look at it daily, yearly, even monthly. Oftentimes I recommend people use something like a target date fund. So this is a fund that's within your retirement plan. It often has a year attached to it. It'll say something like 2065, 2070, something like that. It's basically this kind of like set it and forget it investment option. You put your money into it, it spreads it out among all the other options within your retirement plan, and it auto adjusts as you get older. So as you get older, it will, for example, get a little less risky. So it'll give you more bonds instead of stocks to kind of just give you a little protection, because as you get older, you don't want to have all your money at risk. You don't have to think about it. You have automatic withdrawals coming out of your paycheck, going into your retirement account, let it do its thing, and that's it. You can sleep peacefully at night. You don't have to have 12 screens at your desk with a bunch of charts looking at all this stuff. Being a stock trader, you don't have to do all that, and you can be very successful with a very simple method like that.
Yeah, good. Set it and forget it. I like that.
Thanks for joining us here for the Financial Reset. We hope these tips give you peace of mind and confidence to control your financial future.
And remember, there is never a bad time to reset your money goals.